Please will you welcome, via video link, the Division Manager for Western Canada for Victaulic, Brenden Kotyk.
I'm very excited to be here with each and every one of you today. As some of you may know, I was based in Perth, Australia from 2012 to 2014, and it was an absolute pleasure. So the Australian mechanical community holds a special place in my heart. AV folks, I am still getting a little bit of feedback here on this end, but we will power through. Today, we're going to talk about wielding the manufacturer's mindset, and what the heck does that mean? We're going to unpack three things: mindset, process, and partnerships. That's much better. Thank you very much. Mindset, process, and partnership. And those are three pillars of corporate and construction innovation that we can consider as three legs of the stool. If one of those three is weak, our progress stalls. And I'm here today to hopefully provide a little bit of value on our innovation journey. A little bit about me. No, I am not he behind the Victaulic YouTube channel, although thank you very much for your enthusiasm about the content. Please do check it out. As mentioned, my name is Brenden Kotyk. I have spent the last 15 plus years in construction manufacturing, 12 with Victaulic, and I serve as Division Manager in Western Canada. I'm very passionate about moving our industry forward, and to that end, I serve as a member of the board of directors of the Canadian Construction Association and chair a couple manufacturers and suppliers divisions. Although today I'm in very good company, I often find myself a little bit as the outlier, being a fabrication enthusiast and also a promoter of embodied carbon reduction in construction. But as I say today, perhaps preaching to the choir a little bit. And on a personal level, I'm a husband, a father to a 3-year-old boy, Nicholas. And if you really want to get me going, then let's talk about analog audio, vinyl records, and high fidelity sound systems, my personal passions. If you'd like to reach out to me, please do so there on LinkedIn. Many of you are familiar with Victaulic as the coupling, fitting, and valve company, and we are indeed that. We have spent the last 100 years disrupting the piping industries, really across industries, across geographies, from industrial to institutional applications, certainly commercial construction, fire protection, mining, oil and gas, shipbuilding, and we run the gamut. Although I don't have a fancy hat like these folks do in the picture, although I wouldn't mind having one. We have evolved dramatically as a company over those 100 years. And you know, quite frankly, as the construction industry evolves, many of you too are finding yourselves becoming manufacturers in some regard. So let me share a little bit, a very quick clip about what we are up to today. Let's roll the video. So certainly not quite the company of yesteryear, and we are bullish in trying to move forward and really push the boundaries of what's possible from a fabrication, offsite construction, virtual twin, BIM adoption, volumetric construction, and industrialized construction and fabrication, all mouthfuls and all big bears to wrestle as we look to evolve our industry and each and every one of our organizations. quick confirmation that you do indeed have the presentation. Ah, there we go. Fantastic. As I talk a little bit today about moving forward as an industry, we're also going to talk a little bit about what impedes our progress forward. And to do so, we need to understand status quo. So I know I promised I'd talk to you about the manufacturer's mindset, and we will indeed get there. But I hope you indulge me for a few minutes as we take a little bit of a wandering road to understand what impedes organizational progress, where we are as a construction industry, and perhaps where we might go. And I promise that I will share with you what I believe to be a couple nuggets that we can implement in the near term to help each and every one of us on our way. You know, it would not be a construction innovation forum if somebody didn't put up the McKinsey slide. So I believe, as maybe the second presenter today, I'm getting in early on this one, but it's no surprise to any of us in the room that construction productivity has declined relative to other sectors. And this gentleman on the right-hand side runs a little $12 billion mom and pop shop, Bechtel Corporation, the second largest construction company in the world. And per his very words, he's haunted by the implications of that chart. But let's dig a little bit deeper. What does that mean? And what are we truly seeing here? And should we really be measuring ourselves against the mining industry or against manufacturing or against agriculture? And what has caused this decline in productivity? Well, really what we're looking at here, if we dig down, is the value we create per hour worked. And the value that we're creating for every hour worked lags the economy in general, and it has for decades. I like to get a little bit more geographically specific than that because we're talking about a global economy and a global construction market, and that's maybe a bit tough to wrap our head around. I will put my home country of Canada in the firing line here. We have not been doing so well in terms of the differential in construction sector productivity relative to the total economy. In fact, if we look over a 20-year horizon, we've been losing ground as a construction industry at about a compounded pace of 1% every single year, meaning that the economy in general, and that includes everything, has been gaining productivity about 1% more quickly than the construction industry. And if we look at the last 10 years specifically, which has been a significant period of change and accelerated productivity, this picture is a little bit worse at negative 2.1%. A little closer to home for yourselves in Australia, if we look at the 20-year horizon, we're still at about that negative 0.9% relative to the total economy. Although signs of life, fantastic. If we look at the most recent 10 years, Australia has turned the tide somewhat, gaining relative to the economy in general at about a clip of 1.4% compounded. But that said, if we revert to the slide prior, we see that we have a very long way to go. And why is this? Quite frankly, we should not be surprised. This is the cost of a low bid world. And I'm sure if we had a number of owners in the room, they might duck for cover here, but they're not doing themselves any favors. We are designing bespoke projects with bespoke project teams made up of companies who will do the job the cheapest. So it's no surprise that we have inconsistent processes that bring us to inconsistent results. And until we can implement more collaborative construction procurement, I fear that we will not make the progress that we are hoping to. And so collaboration is a mindset, and that brings us to really our first pillar of corporate renewal and certainly construction industry renewal, our mindset. Identity. I'm going to talk about identity a number of times today, and it is truly our greatest competitive advantage as construction firms, and potentially and I would hazard to suggest most often also our greatest competitive disadvantage. Our identity is who we are. It is, and corporately, it's a summation of who we are as individuals, but also our combined goals, our combined sense of purpose, the actions we take, the way we take those actions. It's who we are, it's what pays the bills, and it's a collection of us that each contributes to our organization as a whole, and more broadly, our industry as a whole. Yet what we find, and our industry is very much incumbent. We are entrenched within our respective industries. Many of our firms are multi-generational. Many of our firms have had incredible stability despite the risks that we bear. And we are an incumbent industry. Yet incumbents, and certainly incumbent organizations, tend not to transition well. And we have a multitude of examples of this. I'm not sure the last time anyone in the room went and rented a VHS tape or put film in their camera, if you even still have one. They're typically now embedded into other devices. But incumbent organizations don't transition well. And so us as incumbents, and us as incumbent industry, we need to recognize why if we are to move forward. And it's really that we can become victims of our own success. Success breeds organizational size. We have more people doing the things that have made us successful to date. And the tenure of those individuals and the tenure of our organization continues to grow. Success breeds size, breeds age, which inevitably breeds a sense of hubris. Look at what we have built, and it certainly doesn't take too much to imagine a contracting community that is proud of its work, and we certainly should be. Yet sometimes perhaps we fly a little too high. And that hubris and the size of our organizations often will lead to organizational inertia, or the tendency for us to just continue doing the same thing because there is sufficient momentum behind it, and that is what pays the bills. However, as we have seen with the incumbent organizations, that tends to create scenarios that are ripe for disruption. And I would argue that the construction industry is ripe for disruption, and each and every one of our organizations, certainly as incumbents, is ripe for disruption. And we will either become participants of that disruption and disrupting ourselves, or we may find ourselves on this list, although I certainly hope not. So we need to consider, each and every one of us, Victaulic included, our 100-year-old coupling company, what is our organizational identity? What are the skills, the attitudes, the roles that we play? What is our style, our traits, the abilities that we have, the value that we create, the record that we hold, the stories that we tell ourselves and the market, our talent? What makes us, and what is it that perhaps impedes us from doing something different? And so as we consider that and our corporate identity, I ask a very simple question. Who owns innovation at your company? You would think that for a 100-year-old manufacturing company who prides ourselves on innovation, that this would be a simple question even within our own ranks, but speaking candidly, it's not so simple. Where do good ideas generate? How are they adopted into the organization? How are they tested? How are they scaled? How are they improved? How are they brought to market? And which ideas win? Who owns innovation at your company? A challenging question, perhaps, to actually answer. But we simply must disrupt status quo, but it's nearly impossible because we're too busy fighting the fights that we have right in front of us. Just like the general here with his trusty sword, disinterested in the Gatling gun because he is busy fighting a battle, so too are many of our organizations, too focused on today's business to recognize that we need to be disrupting our own industry and our own organizations, lest we become disrupted by somebody else. So let's take a look at investment and what that looks like in our organizations. I hazard to say it's just about as good a picture as our productivity gains over the last little while. But let's take a look. This was a 2018 survey of chief information and technology officers globally. The survey was done by Deloitte. And what we're seeing here is the average technology budget as a percentage of total revenue on the left-hand side. So total revenue, how much of that are we reinvesting back into the business as IT and technology investments? The construction industry and infrastructure coming in nearly dead last at 1.68% of revenue reinvested back into our organization as technology. No wonder that we are not perhaps seeing the productivity and disruptive gains that we hope for. Taking a look on the right-hand side, if we see of that 1.68% that is being spent, what are we spending it on? Well, the allocation of that budget is broken down, and what we see is construction and infrastructure spends over 75% of it, in fact, over 80% of that already modest budget on current business operations or incremental changes, as opposed to only 17% of that spend going to true business innovation. So I'm sure there's somebody who's whip smart in the room, probably far more there than where I'm sitting. But quick math tells me that of revenue, we as an industry are spending 0.28% of revenues, reinvesting them back into technology-based business innovations. Folks, we need to do a little bit better than that if we are to move our organizations forward. Some may say, but I have a lean department. We're focusing on lean. Is that not innovation? Is lean not providing incremental improvements? Well, that's just it. That's exactly what it's doing. Lean is providing incremental improvements, but it's not creating the disruptive innovation that is going to be required for us to make step function gains in our productivity and in reducing our risk. If we consider lean, and I pick on lean here for a minute, not because I don't believe in it. I think lean is fundamentally important to both construction and manufacturing. It's just that we can't conflate lean with true disruptive innovation inside our organizations. And certainly us in the manufacturing space sometimes fall a little bit prey to this, thinking that we can lean ourselves to innovation. But lean itself is really the core idea that we're maximizing value while minimizing waste. And so simply means that we're creating more value with less resources. And that certainly plays a core function in our existing business and existing markets. That is where lean plays a role. Waste reduction, that's existing products, existing markets, but it's not going to get us to adjacent markets or even incremental products, and certainly is not getting us to transformation. So what will get us to true transformational step function changes? Great question. Perhaps modularization. I absolutely love sharing this because I typically get some chuckles. And in fact, this is a Australian built skid. For those with an eagle eye, you'll see the Civmec logo there on the right-hand side. Is modularization truly our knight in shining armor, or stated differently, industrialized volumetric construction? Certainly there has been a lot of buzz around what vertically integrated modular construction can look like. And let's take a look now at one of my favorite case studies on this very topic. A company backed out of Silicon Valley in the United States, a company called Katerra. And let's try this video. quite an incredible story, and in my opinion, inspirational in terms of the technology that Katerra adopted and implemented into their delivery. Truly transformational. So let's take a look at where they are now, completely bankrupt. um, this is as of June of 2021. Katerra had tried to shake up the construction industry by assembling buildings in factories, the Wall Street Journal, yet they succumbed. And why is that? And are they a cautionary tale for us that investment in technology, vertical integration of manufacturing in the construction industry, is that something that should be avoided, and is there danger down that path? Certainly one could draw that conclusion, and we regress to our current status quo. Yet I would suggest that we take caution before jumping to that conclusion, lest we take one step forward and two steps back. So what went wrong with Katerra? And while I think all the details of that are still coming out, and certainly will be a story to follow over the coming months and certainly years, I envision that we will see many of the familiar faces from Katerra pop up elsewhere. And as is often the case, sometimes they who are breaking through fundamental walls of industry, it's not always the first cab off the rank that is the beneficiary of the ultimate success. So Katerra, what happened? I think they were somewhat too exploratory. And let's consider here for a little bit the challenge that each of us face. We have Katerra on one end of the spectrum, hyper innovative, technology focused, Silicon Valley backed, SoftBank, one of the more progressive investment backers globally. And they truly put a significant amount of force behind what Katerra was doing, and they were true explorers in our industry. However, many of us are faced with just the exact opposite end of the spectrum, where we are in a place of limited technological investment and ultimately limited transformational change within organizations. So where do we go from here? And I highly recommend, if you're going to pick up any book, although I'm sure you'll end up with a whole list of them over the next couple of days, please consider this by Stanford professor Charles O'Reilly and Harvard Business School professor Mike Tushman, that of Corporate Explorer, which describes in a significant degree of detail. This folks, is only 2 months old, this publishing, and it's based on 20 years of research into corporate inertia. It talks about the need for ambidexterity of organizations. Ambidexterity, meaning we need to play two games well at once, that of exploit and that of explore. Exploit not in a negative term, but exploit meaning exploit what makes us successful and what has made us successful. Essentially, to do what we do better than anybody else. That is what pays the bills. At the same time, holding in tension a piece of our organization that does something completely different and explores fundamentally transformative innovation that can disrupt ourselves before we're disrupted by others. Exploit and explore as an ambidextrous organization. Incredibly difficult to do. And it's us as leaders of our organizations that need to hold that tension. We absolutely need our departments and our people focused on execution of our core business strategy, because that is what pays the bills. Yet at the same time, if that's all that we focus on, we will ultimately become disrupted as somebody else is exploring on our behalf. So there are 3 pillars that we must consider here. Corporate innovation as a strategy, absolutely. Technology adoption, absolutely, and investment therein. Lean, bringing us incremental change and bringing us cost reduction, to exploit what we do well even better. But I would argue that there's then yet a fourth for our industry, and that is adopting the manufacturer's mindset. As I mentioned earlier, many of us are finding ourselves in situations where we are now pivoting to controlled environments, making something, albeit still bespoke, in a controlled environment. Well, that, friends, is manufacturing. So what is the manufacturer's mindset, and what can it mean for us and our businesses? It's the idea of designing one and building many. It's about creating a digital twin that has fixed dimensions and componentized it for repeatability. It's creating a standardized set of CAD or Revit families that each carry an operational path to it, whereby we select that item, whatever it has been, and it can run its way through our organization in a single SKU operation that allows us to deliver that product. It's about measurable process and driven outputs that allows us to scale, ultimately pulling as much as we can into controlled environments. Why? So that we can reduce variability of labor, which is ultimately our biggest risk. Material is not our risk, labor is our risk. Implementing best practices, and then constantly testing and removing waste. That sounds like an absolute mouthful. And how do we begin? Well, we just need to. And that's exactly, returning now to Brenden Bechtel, that's exactly what they are doing. This is about a week old. Brenden Bechtel announced that they are launching a manufacturing and technology business that will design and build and integrate complex components for the engineering, semiconductor, electric vehicles, synthetic materials, and data center sectors. So they're branching out from traditional field run construction, implementing a manufacturing and technology business that pursues adjacent markets, such as semiconductors, such as electric vehicles, synthetic materials, so that they can bring some of the lessons that they learn there back into their core business. So this is true corporate exploration. They are not abandoning the $12 billion worth of construction that makes them into one of the top construction companies globally. That is still their core function. Yet they are creating an exploratory wing to their business that allows them to disrupt themselves, bring in ideas from other sectors before they become disrupted. So what's the process to do so? Let's take a look and get a little bit to more nitty-gritty. I'm sure many of us have spent an entire day at IKEA somewhere, filling up the back of our vehicles with flat packed goodies to assemble at home, typically at greater expense than we expected, and certainly with a degree of frustration perhaps. But IKEA is an incredible story. They're not the first to develop flat pack furniture, yet they're certainly the ones to take it to scale. And if we consider the genius of what IKEA has done, it's to take 5 pieces of hardware, 1 tool, and for the most part, 2 materials, and create hundreds and hundreds of products out of them. Let's consider that for a minute. 5 pieces of hardware, 1 tool, and generally 2 materials that equate to hundreds of products. Incredible. And as we look then to lean and incremental benefits, if we can make one of those 5 components 1% better, the impact across our organization is staggering. And this, friends, is considered productization, and it's what we need to do within our organizations. Typically, as we see on the left, field run construction, we have a whole variety of bits and parts and bits and pieces that need to be procured from different places, and we need to manage them all on site and then create a bespoke item. But there's no need for that when we can create one and build it many times in standardized equipment modules. And what's the benefit here? We can take something that traditionally might be 66 joints, and using the best and brightest bits and pieces around, maybe turn that into 36 using some street smarts and good procurement practices. But through productization and componentization, we can turn that into something like 12 joints that's repeatable, that can then be brought, that productivity can then be brought to the front end of our project. Certainly our labor risk when we're considering a product that enables 12 joints relative to 66, it tightens up our estimate, it tightens up our schedule, and reduces our risk. And so maybe this idea that fabrication is the way forward, and fabrication and productization is the way forward is certainly one that's enamored many of us. And I know that many in the room have already invested in fabrication and offsite construction and look to productize. But I would hazard to suggest that maybe many of us also find that all we are doing is we have just moved the work. We have moved a process from outside to inside. And I'm unsure whether or not that truly means we're achieving the results that we're expecting. Fabrication does not necessarily mean lean, innovative construction. We need to consider baking lean in from the beginning. We need to consider our sequencing. We need to consider the productization and the sub-assemblies that we are creating, designing one, building many, so that ultimately we can get that to site in reverse sequence and reduce our labor risk along the way. And so as we look ahead, we're considering both our core existing markets and our transformational. We're considering our core and our explore. Corporate innovation as a pillar, lean as a pillar, technology as a pillar, and the manufacturer's mindset. What does that do to our identity as we were considering earlier? Again, many of us are proud of our identity as plumbers, pipe fitters, tradespeople. And when we consider this future, it is in stark contrast to what has brought us this far and ultimately what pays our bills. But I would suggest we reframe this. It's not our past identity against our new identity, but it's our past identity and our new identity in tandem. A little anecdote as we consider our future identity and what can perhaps, I guess, go wrong if we don't consider the ways in which we are implementing these new processes. There was a $2 billion hospital, and this is an anecdote that was shared with me just today. A $2 billion hospital, and as part of the debrief, the mechanical contractor was asked, because he was very proud of the extent to which they had BIMmed the project. The entire thing was BIMmed, and they spent thousands of hours developing their model. And the question was raised, how much of that can be reused? And humbly, they replied, 0. If we're not considering the way technology can be used in a repeatable fashion and productizing what we're doing into subcomponents that can then be reused and reused and reused, all we're doing is moving labor from one function to another, and we're not truly making those transformational gains that we might otherwise. So many things to consider, so many things to adopt, and how could we possibly prioritize them? And I know that that's often one of our biggest challenges. How do we prioritize? So I'm going to share a little bit behind the curtain of how manufacturers will often look to prioritize and innovate. And it's through priority modeling innovation. And this is a tool that can be used really by any organization. It's a manner of evaluating potential innovations and potential technology investments and potential transformations within your organizations across a multitude of dimensions, ranging, and dimensions and categories. So categories such as, the probability of technical success, what strategic leverage that might bring you in the marketplace, your probability of commercial success, and the strategic fit. And those dimensions below that roll up. And from there, we at Victaulic will then map those against a potential return and probability of success, because as we know, there's just such a huge multitude of what ifs, what could we create, and eventually you need to prioritize and focus. Otherwise, we're just really blowing in the wind. I like to borrow this idea from Silicon Valley, and it's that of the MVP, or the minimum viable product. And I think this is something that many of us feel we need to come to a place of fully vetted, fully baked success with an idea before we bring it to market. And we are hesitant to innovate in real time in front of our customers. And I would suggest that that is one of the things that leads to delays in ultimate adoption of new technologies and processes. So the idea of the minimum viable product is that ideation, coming up with ideas, is easy. We can investigate and consider, yes, maybe this one will work, maybe it won't. But the challenging part is in development and scaling. And so perhaps we don't need to consider full development and scale upfront, but through a process of developing a minimum viable product, just like that little PRV station that I showed you, creating something standard. And this is something that you could take home on Monday morning and consider, what do I repeatably make, and can I create a process around it that's fixed and serves as a truly repeatable process? And is there a minimum viable example of what that looks like? And just start. From there, seek and create opportunities for very quick feedback loops. Is it good? Is it okay? Is it terrible? Does it need an adjustment? And the quicker you can iterate and create those feedback loops, the more that minimum viable product gets fleshed out in real time and over time, that can then be taken to scale. If you'd like to dig a little deeper into minimum viable product and certainly lean product development, please, the Lean Launchpad is certainly worth a look. So where are we going as an industry? And what is our North Star? Where should we be pointed? Are we pointed towards technology? Are we pointed towards manufacturing? Are we pointed towards modularization? Are we pointed towards some yet again unknown? I believe our North Star as an industry will over time prove to be design for manufacture and assembly. And if you'd like to review some case studies, there's some excellent ones out of Singapore. And the Singaporean government has been very bullish in their public procurement in ensuring that their delivery models are indeed designed for offsite manufacture and assembly. But you will note the order of operations here: design for manufacture and assembly. I wouldn't suggest we need to go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on manufacturing equipment, robotics, robotic welding machines, and automated handling equipment. First, we need to consider the design of our project, the design of our team, the design of our productization, and then move to manufacturing. Too many times we've made investments and they end up collecting dust, a little bit like all the Peloton bikes that were sold during the pandemic. No one's using them anymore. We don't want to start making technology and capital equipment investments that don't stand the test of time. And that really results in a need for upfront design and a thought process around what our organization is going to be able to execute and how we can productize. Partnerships, as we wrap. Many of us have no formal part of our organization that is set to explore. We have no exploratory manufacturing and technology group like $12 billion Brenden Bechtel. We are very busy today with executing our core business. Indeed, that's what pays the bills. Folks, we don't need to bring this all in-house on day one. Partnerships allow us to plug in those who have already gone ahead of us and can lead us further down the path than we otherwise would. Of course, timing is everything here. And if you seek to bring project partners in when the ship has sailed and we're deep into the construction phase, of course, that will not fly, and you will not receive the outside gains that are available. But with an organizational mindset, an adoption of technology, a process that values innovation, and partnerships with outside vendors, friends, and colleagues in the industry that have unique expertise that you're lacking, we can go a very long way. And so with that, I would like to thank you very much for your time and open up for a little bit of Q&A.
With a question there, if I could,
Yeah,
Charlie.
sure. Shannon's going to kick off with the first question.
Yeah. G'day, Brenden. Hopefully, can you just want to check and make sure you can hear me?
I can indeed. Thanks, Shannon.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, just firstly, brilliant presentation. I think the first two, yourself and John, have been fantastic, and I guess a lot to take in. So you spoke a little bit about the concepts of exploit and explore, and scalability, and some great tools there on how to move forward with ideas. I guess one of the things that kind of came to mind was, how does Victaulic as a company take those concepts, those ideas, those innovations, and are they applied globally? I guess Victaulic being a global business, what does that mean for Australia? So or is there, various regions that take the lead with these things, or locations around the world, or, how does it look, I guess, in a global sense? Is it an even lift in terms of innovation globally?
I think it needs to be. If we are too focused in Eastern Pennsylvania, where our headquarters lie, we're going to be missing a huge opportunity to crowdsource best practices and innovations, and ultimately market need. Our customers are not all based in Pennsylvania, and so no two can our ideas and innovations be focused there. And so, one of the things that Victaulic strives to do, and we can certainly continue to lean into this, is the ways in which we both crowdsource challenges, but also innovations and ideas, and bring them up to our our R&D and our manufacturing departments, and see what we can do to solve those challenges. We've been really leaning into that, and in fact have created an innovation department that allows us to more quickly vet new ideas and new challenges that are sourced, be it from our field staff or our customers, or really anybody globally that chooses to reach out. And so we're looking at ways to create as wide a funnel as possible for both, as I mentioned, challenge and innovation, because being a global company, we need to operate both on a global scale, but also hyper local. Lest we be telling a story that might ring true somewhere, but elsewhere is not resonating.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you probably answered my second question there, really around some of our delegates today, trying to understand around how they generate their own ideas. I think not everybody's in the sort of field of innovation or department of innovation in their own businesses. They've got their own roles. But how do companies generate ideas? And is it, I guess, as I said, I think you've mostly answered it just then, but I guess just to comment on it, those ideas come internally, and I think one of the great benefits you pointed out is around those partnerships and then being able to generate ideas externally as well. So yeah, just I guess a comment there to say that that's like a great approach.
Yeah, and if you're looking for ideas in terms of where innovation might be focused, visit the job site. The job site never lies, and I'm sure if we spend a little bit of time with certainly our frontline installers, and that's something that Victaulic takes very seriously, and that's why we spend the time and energy that we do on training and job site visits, and having a global frontline sales force that visits job sites, some 700 strong, because show up at the job site and witness the process, and ask the question, what might make your life a little bit easier, or what tasks are we repeating that maybe we could put a standard process around that would cut some time out of that. And I bet we would come up with all sorts of ideas. And so I guess that would be my encouragement, is ask your frontline staff and your frontline installers and fitters, they're full of ideas, because they're the ones living the challenges every day. And sometimes we get a little bit too stuck in project management mode, or a little bit too stuck in project acquisition mode, or custom client interface, and we're missing the beat on the ground. So huge opportunity for innovation and crowdsourcing. You know, and one of the things that, you know, some of the great technology companies do is they hold innovation days, or you know, sometimes they'll call them hackathons, where, you know, they'll present a challenge, and, you know, they bring everybody together to solve that challenge, you know, cross-functionally, or, you know, conversely, you know, looking for ideas, they'll bring everyone together cross-functionally and throw some ideas at the wall, and you know, play some mind mapping exercises to you know, think through those to logical, you know, conclusion, you know, third, fourth degree, you know, next steps, you know, what ifs. And it's an incredibly powerful way to find not only the root cause of the challenge, but maybe where innovation efforts should be spent, because obviously they're finite, and you know, you want to be focusing them to the best degree possible.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Well, guys, if you could please put your hands together again for Brenden. Thank him so much for this morning.
Thank you very much.